We've grown a lot of tomatoes over the years, but these 3 varieties this year have been some of the most interesting tomatoes we've ever grown. Now, as you walk through our garden, you'll see that we are tomato growers. We love growing tomatoes. We're no experts, okay? But we've done this quite a while, and I would never claim to be an expert. But what I will say is that we've experienced a lot of different tomato varieties, and we are heirloom tomato growers. For sure, you can see that some tomatoes face disease problems or have issues. That's gonna happen with heirloom tomatoes, right? But we are also learning that not just heirlooms are necessary. Like, we do believe in having, producing fruit that gives seed, But we're also understanding that some hybrids are sometimes necessary. And today we're going to cover 3 tomatoes that, one may be a hybrid, a couple of them may be heirlooms, that are the most interesting ones we've grown in a long time. We love growing Romas, and we love growing Cherokee Purples. We love growing German Johnson, was one of our favorite heirlooms. Brandywine, a classic heirloom that everybody loves. All these tomatoes are fun to grow. Amish Paste is another one. Great tomato varieties to grow. But again, sometimes heirlooms will have their disease issues, right? And so because of that, we look for other tomatoes, and some of these are heirlooms still, but we do look to other tomatoes sometimes to kind of help us out and break that disease cycle. And sometimes it's just a lot of fun to grow something different. Now this monstrosity here is a Berri's Crazy Cherry. Some of y'all may have grown it before, you may have heard about it. It is crazy. It's exactly what its name says. Now it's faced some struggles here, okay? This is why we call it interesting, because it's isolated. There's no other tomatoes touching it, around it. It's in a muck bucket, okay? See that? It's a large container, and it's producing a bunch of these tomatoes. It's going to be yellow tomatoes, yellow pear-shaped tomatoes, okay? And it's a multiflora, so if you're not familiar with it, it means that it's going to grow a branch out that then branches out, okay? So it's going to produce a bunch of little tomatoes at one time, and they do tend to fall off if you touch them. So that's just, even if they're not ready. So that one will get ready, they're just falling. See, so they're very sensitive. If you look up, see, it's obviously facing issues like all this right here. I don't know what's going on with that. We've watered it well. I've refertilized it to see what's going on. Who knows? This is the second time we've grown it. We grew it in the ground with other tomatoes before, and it did get smothered out or succumb to disease or something. I remember that. So we isolated it this time to see what would happen. And it's still facing some troubles, but it has produced a crazy amount of cherry tomatoes that are getting ripe all at once. Like, it's an unbelievable amount of cherry tomatoes. Those down there might be ready now. They're getting really close, but a lot of them, if you see, have just a little green at the top, maybe. Just a little shading of green at the top. But there are hundreds of little cherry tomatoes in there that I'm honestly really excited about. And we're anxious to see if it can produce more, because the way it has grown has been interesting. It's put out a lot more blossoms that just didn't make it. Now, we did have extreme heat, right? So we were extremely hot, followed by, with no moisture, then followed by a bunch of water, then followed by a little drought, then followed by a bunch of water. So it's been a little inconsistent on water, and we did our best, obviously, to water. And in containers, it's going to be a little different. Like in a plastic or resin container, it's going to get hot. It's going when the sun hits that resin or that plastic, it's going to get hotter in there, and so it's going to face different elements inside of there than it will face in the ground or even in a grow bag. But what I can tell you about this crazy tomato plant is that we will try it again, I do believe. Now, another tomato variety that's interesting is this wherokowhai, is what it's called. It is a New Zealand heirloom. I do believe it's an heirloom. We got these seeds from In My Gardener, so I'm not sure exactly. I don't think it said hybrid, but we got them from In My Gardener, if that tells you anything. You can get it other places as well, but we got them from Luke. And is a dwarf indeterminate, I believe is what it is. It's a dwarf indeterminate New Zealand variety that is producing some fascinating tomatoes, but it's also showing a lot of troubles with these leaves. It's going to ripen to yellow, as you see down here, like a yellowish orange with a blush. Something ate on that. Maybe a raccoon or a possum, because we've had both in here. So something ate on that one, but we've had some, maybe a squirrel even, but you're going to ripen to yellow with a red blush, okay, which is fascinating to me. I love that. But again, it started yellowing. We did put 2 inside this big container, so we'd use potting mix. again, but there's 2 inside this muck bucket, and it faces the same situation as the Berri's Crazy Cherry, but it is producing a bunch of tomatoes throughout, right? A bunch of tomatoes up through here, and if it is indeterminate, it should produce more as it goes up. But now, again, what's causing this? I don't know. We felt like we watered it okay. I haven't refertilized this one yet, but I fertilized it heavy as we planted it. So I don't know what the issue could be here. Now in containers, again, you face different situations. It gets hot, it dries out. It's different than in-ground gardening, so you don't know exactly what has happened with it. But obviously something has affected it really bad, and it started yellowing started yellowing pretty decently a few weeks ago. But who knows what's caused it. Honestly, we felt like we watered it plenty. We've spent a lot of time watering in the heat. I don't feel like we watered it too much, but I mean, you don't know what's going on with some of these varieties. They're fairly new, especially. You don't know what might be affecting them, but the tomatoes look great. Now with a tomato and pepper, you do have to realize that if they're in a container, even if you got a large container, it might affect the size of the fruit some. And we put 2 tomato plants there in that one large one, so it may affect the size of the fruit. It probably could put out a bigger tomato than what it is putting out, but those are still really nice tomatoes. And it's really fascinating because we haven't had to stake it like we stake everything else. Now we do have another one that we planted by itself in a grow bag, so let's see how it's doing in comparison, even though it was planted a little bit later. So for comparison's sake, we had this one here. Now it is touching this Roma that we planted at another time, but it's looking really good. It might be doing better individually by itself. You know, I don't know exactly but it's looking really good. Now again, it's yellowed here at the bottom a little bit, got some bug damage and whatnot, but it's a really strong plant. That's one thing that I can't stress enough is how strong this plant is. Here on the other side, you see more fruit from it growing out, and it's branched out really good. And we tied this branch up with a bamboo stake, but just because it's got so much weight, you're trying to hold it up and don't let it break, right? Again, it's very fascinating. Fascinating for small space gardeners, for people who love different varieties of tomatoes, and who just like trying different stuff. I think we will grow this one again, and maybe we try a different situation with it. Maybe we just keep doing what we're doing. But again, it's a wherokowhai. It's a Kiwi word. Kiwi is the language that they speak in, or vernacular maybe, I'm not sure what you want to call it, but it's a Kiwi word, wherokowhai. So that's what they speak there in New Zealand, right? But it's again, super fascinating variety that we're not disappointed in. Now lastly, we go to the in-ground garden. We planted a hybrid. Look, we've planted a hybrid in our in-ground garden every year for the past 3 years. And we do that because hybrids have good disease resistance, and it helps to break up the spread of disease inside your garden. Well, so my belief is that if you have some heirlooms that are prone to disease, put a couple of hybrids around it, right? Especially in our situation where we have 3 rows. I'll show you how our setup looks. Like in our situation where we have 3 rows, okay? We have 1, 2, 3 rows here of tomatoes. It helps to kind of surround maybe a disease-prone tomato, like a German Johnson, like an Amish paste, with a hybrid that's not disease-prone, so that therefore they can't spread the disease to the other tomato plants, and it just helps kind of calm the storm per se. And also the hybrids are normally good producers. One problem with hybrids is that typically the flavor isn't as great, right? So you're trying to figure that out. We've got a hybrid this year that we're probably going to grow more of next year, to be honest with you. We've tried others before and they were okay, but this one right here is from Haas Tools. It's called Rubee Dawn, R-U-B-E-E Dawn, D-A-W-N. It has been a fantastic producer. It's got a better flavor than any hybrid we've tasted, and it's not fazed by any disease issues at all. Here's one example of it. This is not the biggest example, but it's a good example of a Rubee Dawn. It's going to be the size somewhere from a large early girl to a better boy hybrid. They'll be like a Bonnie Best an heirloom variety, and it's great. And they get deep red. So this is not. Oh, that one fell though. Again, they will fall, and that's just tomatoes in general. So it's really good. It's not maybe quite at its peak, but it's a really good tomato. Here's a really good example right here. I'm gonna try not to knock this one off the vine. It's still a little more orange than the other one. That's a nice tomato. They will get, I think, up to about 12 ounces, but they can go probably down to 4 ounces, honestly. And the plants have been fantastic. Again, there's no issues here. No issues in these plants at all. And I got 2 here. Then we got a Brandywine, which is the little disease prone. You see the problems it's facing. Then another Rubee Dawn, and then another Brandywine, and you see the problems it's facing, right? So you see that this Rubee Dawn isn't affected by this one or by this one at all. Some of them have split a little bit today, but we did get a bunch of rain last night out of the middle of nowhere, so that probably affected that. Wasn't expecting that kind of rain. So it's been a fantastic variety that we're going to grow more of and probably replace Bonnie Best, because Bonnie Best seem to be dwindling. See, that's the issue with heirlooms. We love heirlooms. We're necessary. You got to have good heirlooms to produce good hybrids. But and you just need the food because they produce seeds, right? So we need heirlooms desperately bad. But a lot of the heirloom seeds you're going to get these days are passing disease on, passing bad traits on to their next generations, right? Because if you harvest seeds from an heirloom tomato that get you, and maybe that heirloom tomato has wilt or has something going on with it, you're passing on traits of disease. So that's another story. Heck, maybe a devotional, right? But that you're passing on these bad traits, and you're creating poorer varieties down the road that won't last. And it's really tough to produce great seeds. Honestly, we couldn't produce them here very easily because we grow so many varieties. We cross-pollinated really easily. But so we love heirlooms. They are necessary, but it's hard to get good heirloom seeds that aren't passing on poor qualities and poor traits to the next generation. So those 3 tomato varieties we're loving right now. They do have their issues. Okay, like everything, nobody's perfect. But hey, these tomatoes right here, we love them, and we're always going to be producing them. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. My name is Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. We love y'all. God bless you, and goodbye.